Et il faut que tu saches que malheureusement, si tu veux découvrir ce qu'est la matrice, tu devras l'explorer toi-même. C'est là ta dernière chance. Tu ne pourras plus faire marche arrière. Choisis la pilule bleue et tout s'arrête. Après, tu pourras faire de beaux rêves et penser ce que tu veux. Choisis la pilule rouge, tu restes au pays des merveilles. Et on descend avec le lapin blanc au fond du gouffre.
Putain, je vois ici les hommes les plus forts et les plus intelligents que j'ai jamais eus. Je vois tout ce potentiel. Et je le vois gâché. Je vois une génération entière qui travaille à des pompes à essence, qui fait le service dans des restos, ou qui est esclave d'un petit chef dans un bureau. La pub nous fait courir après des voitures et des fringues. On fait des boulots qu'on déteste pour se payer des merdes qui nous servent à rien. On est les enfants oubliés de l'histoire, mes amis. On n'a pas de but ni de vraie place. On n'a pas de grande guerre, pas de grande dépression. Notre grande guerre est spirituelle. Notre grande guerre est spirituelle. Notre grande guerre est spirituelle.
La matrice est un système, Néo. Et ce système est notre ennemi. Quand on est à l'intérieur, qu'est-ce qu'on voit partout? Des hommes d'affaires, des enseignants, des avocats, des charpentiers. C'est avec leur esprit qu'on communique pour essayer de les sauver. Mais en attendant, tous ces gens font quand même partie de ce système. Ce qui fait d'eux nos ennemis. Ce qu'il faut que tu comprennes, c'est que pour la plupart, ils ne sont pas prêts à se laisser débrancher. Bon nombre d'entre eux sont tellement inconscients et désespérément dépendants du système qu'ils vont jusqu'à se battre pour le protéger.
The world has been turned into a maze of confusion. And it's done to keep us from the simple truths. Because complexity is there to stop us finding those simple truths. But when you connect the dots, can you start to see why the world is upside down, why it is as it is? And crucially, behind that complexity, those smoke screens of complexity, why behind that is an amazing revelation of who we are and the nature of life.
Réfléchissez un peu. Ce qu'on a fait, c'était pas pour le fric. C'était une bataille entre nous et le système. Pour montrer comment ce système tue l'esprit humain. C'est ça qu'on représente. On montre à tous ces cadavres qui s'entassent pare-choc contre pare-choc au péage dans leur cercueil en métal que l'esprit humain est encore en vie.
This is the first big step. Governments are not there to serve the people. Governments are there to serve those that control the governments and enslave the people. That's what they're there for. Once we realize that, then a lot of dots start to connect.
The people who control our society don't want us to go into bliss. Because if our chakras and our kundalini and other things are all awake and we become more divine conscious, as a super conscious and awareness, they have no control over you. If there's nothing to fear except fear itself and you drop that fear, then you have to be in bliss.
If you choose love, the ego subsides, you wake up and you start seeing the reality of what's really going on around you. The ego only has a very small vision of what actually is taking place and occurring. And an individual in an ego is very easily controlled. But a person awakening, a person who becomes enlightened, can't be controlled at all. In fact, there's an old saying that an enlightened being plays with the universe the way that a child plays with a ball. Because they see the reality of everything. They can't be tricked. They can't be fooled.
In Washington, D.C., the so-called murder capital of the world, there was a big experiment in the summer of 1993 where 4,000 volunteers came from 100 countries to collectively meditate for long periods of time throughout the day. It was predicted in advance that with such a sized group, you'd have a 25% drop in violent crime, as defined by the FBI, in Washington that summer. Well, the chief of police went on television saying that, look, it's going to take 2 feet of snow to reduce crime by 25% in Washington, D.C. this summer. But by the end, the police department became a collaborator and author of this study because the results, in fact, showed a 25% drop in violent crime in Washington, D.C., which we could predict on the basis of 48 previous studies that had already been done on a smaller scale.
Thoughts are very powerful. If it is a positive thought, it will travel to the positive collective. If you send out a negative thought, it will travel to the negative collective around the world, and it will have a negative effect on the planet.
Subway exhibit comes to us from Japan and Mr. Masuro Emoto. Mr. Emoto became terribly interested in the molecular structure of water and what affects it. Now, water is the most receptive of the 4 elements. Mr. Emoto thought perhaps it would respond to non-physical events. So he set up a series of studies, applied mental stimuli, and photographed it with a dark field microscope. This first picture is a picture of water from the Fujiwara Dam. And this picture is the same water after receiving a blessing from a Zen Buddhist monk. Now, in this next series of pictures, Mr. Emoto printed out words, taped them to bottles of distilled water, and left them out overnight. This first photograph is a picture of the pure distilled water, just the essence of itself. These subsequent photographs, as you can see, are each different. This is the chi of love. And we move along here to thank you. And you can see where he taped that to this bottle here. But if you read Japanese, you already knew that. Now, Mr. Emoto speaks of the thought or intent being the driving force in all of this. The science of how that actually affects the molecules is unknown, except to the water molecules, of course. And it's really fascinating when you keep in mind that 90% of our bodies are water.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it? If thoughts can do that to water, imagine what our thoughts can do to us.
And when the new beliefs come into the public, civilization will take a radical turn and move off into a new situation of thriving and harmony and holism. That's the dimension that we're going to. This is the end of the civilization of the old beliefs and the transition into the new one.
So you never answered my question.
What question?
How far down the rabbit hole do you want to go?
Ponder that for a while.